Alright, so in this video we're going to work on ratios and proportions number 7, questions 2 and 6. Before you actually view this video, you should review your notes on what a part-to-part and a part-to-whole ratio is. Okay, so let's begin. Number 2, the ratio of boys to girls in the robotics teams is 2 to 3. If the number of boys is 12, what is the total number of students in the robotics team? Alright, so first let's highlight some given information. So they tell us that the ratio of boys to girls in the robotics teams is 2 to 3. If the number of boys is 12, what is the total number of students in the robotics team? Okay, so first step, let's just break down the information that's given to us. So that's step 1. So, in the first part of the question, they tell us that the ratio of boys to girls is 2 to 3. Now, I'm not going to write that down as a 2 to 3 ratio. I want to break down that ratio. So that tells us we're going to have 2 boys, 3 girls, and 5 total. Okay? The second step is to decide whether this is going to be a part-to-part or a part-to-whole question. Now, to decide whether it's going to be a part-to-part or a part-to-whole question, you have to look for some clues in the problem itself. Alright, so let's reread the problem. It says the ratio of boys to girls in the robotics teams is 2 to 3. If the number of boys is 12, what is the total number of students in the robotics team? So if you look closely, the question is saying, what is the total number of students in the robotics team? So this tells us that this is going to be a part-to-whole question. Okay? So once again, first step, write down your given information. Second step, decide whether it's going to be a part-to-part or a part-to-whole question. And the third step is going to be to make a proportion. So if you recall from ratios and proportions worksheet number 2, the guidelines for our proportion was what you know equals to what you want to know. Now, when doing proportion questions, we could actually change what we want to know to the scenario, to the given scenario. So first of all, for the what we know part, we have to create some ratio from the given information that we know. Now, seeing that it's already a part-to-whole question, right? We decided on that before. We could create 2 different part-to-whole ratios from our given information. We could either have 2 boys to 5 total, or we could have 3 girls to 5 total. Now we have to decide which ratio is going to be the one for the problem that we're actually doing. And to decide that is to look at the scenario that they're giving us in the problem. So let's go back to the problem. The ratio of boys to girls in the robotics team is 2 to 3. If the number of boys is 12, what is the total number of students in the robotics team? Alright, so the scenario that they're giving us in the problem is if the number of boys is 12. The scenario is about boys. So therefore, the part-to-whole ratio that we're going to pick is going to be 2 boys to 5 total. So let's write that down for the part we know. 2 boys, 5 total. And this is going to be equal to some other ratio that we get from the scenario. Well, if you recall, we actually already said that the scenario is if the number of boys is 12. So we know that one number in the scenario is going to be 12. Now 12 represents the number of boys. So you have to decide if 12 boys is going to be in the top or on the bottom. Well, remember that units have to match. The units on the top need to be the same, and the units in your denominator also need to be the same. So therefore, 12 boys needs to be on the bottom. In X, on the bottom. 12 boys needs to be on the top, and X represents the total on the bottom. So we need to find out the total of number of students on the robotics team if there's 12 boys. So we have our proportion set up. Let's cross multiply and solve. So 2 times X equals 5 times 12. When we simplify, we get 2x equals 60. Divide by the coefficient on both sides. 2 divided by 2, that is 1. We're left with 1x, which is just x, equals 30 total. Alright, so what this means is, if there are 12 boys on the robotics team, then there are 30 total. Okay? Now, one thing I want to point out is we actually could have used a part-to-part ratio to answer this question. So if we decided to use a part-to-part ratio, we would have two boys over 3 girls equals, remember the second ratio comes from your scenario, 12 boys to X girls. Now, if we were to solve this proportion, we would get X equals 18 girls. Alright, so if the question was asking for the number of girls, it would be 18 girls. But in this case, the question is asking for the total number of students on the robotics teams. So we would need to add the number of boys to the number of girls to get 30 total. Okay? So that's just another way of doing the question. Alright, thank you for watching, and watch the next video for question number 6.